Hello, my name is Thomas Joseph, and I'm going to be presenting my careers in chemistry presentation. I'm sharing my screen right now. Sorry about that. All right, so sorry. Neurosurgery or a neurosurgeon by Thomas Joseph. That's me. So, what is a neurosurgeon? A neurosurgeon, amongst like other surgeons, they are specialized surgeons, and they are trained through med school and through residency to diagnose neurological disorders and to surgically treat the brain, nerves, and the spinal cord. So neurosurgeons are a step up from a neurologist. Neurologists, what they do is they diagnose and they treat neurological disorders, but they do so in a non-surgical manner. Neurologists do some minor procedures. They can do some small things, but at max they can take like half an hour to an hour. Neurosurgeons work with bigger things. They are crucial. They do surgeries that last upwards of 20 hours, maybe a day, just complete on the table complete surgery. Neurosurgeons are also called brain surgeons or neurological surgeons, and this is probably where like the misconception started, where neurosurgeons only work on the brain, the skull, the head region. That is simply not true. Neurosurgeons work in any aspect of your body that's been affected by trauma or any or internal disorder to your nervous system. So this can be your nerves, you can be like tremors or a tumor in your spinal cord or your spinal cord dislocated discs, any sort of diseases that can be traced back to the nervous system. A neurosurgeon will be called to consult, if not treat surgically on them. And onto the left, you can see a picture of a neurosurgery going on. The neurosurgeon in charge is the one wearing his the little glasses, the zoom in glasses. That's how you know who the lead surgeon is. They typically have those glasses on. That helps them see closer. So education requirements for a neurosurgeon is highly difficult, obviously, because they work on people's brains, and you need a lot of training to do that. It's not some everyday thing that anybody can do. So for starters, you need a high school diploma. At the very least, you need a high school diploma, and you need a bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree can be some some say that it can be in any major you so please, as long as you take the classes that prepare you for medical school. But typically, the four most popular majors from a neurosurgeon is biology, chemistry, chemical engineering, and biochemistry. But there are known cases of theology majors and art majors becoming neurosurgeons, but it is much less likely. After your bachelor's degree, well, you can continue and get a master's degree and a PhD, but that isn't truly necessary to become a neurosurgeon. In fact, you can go from your bachelor's degree straight to 4 years of med school. It requires, taking the MCAT and submitting your application to med school. And if you get in, it's 4 years of med school. And then only are you ready for residency. So neurosurgeons, in order to become a neurosurgeon, you have to do a 6 to 7 year neurosurgery residency. This is different than other surgeons or other branches, because most surgeries, such as cardio or orthopedics, you take after 4 years of med school, you take a 5 year general surgery requirement. One of the years being in the internship phase, and then the 4 years you spend as a resident, you work as like a surgeon. You get paid, but you don't get like paid like as much as you think. And while they work, after that, after the general surgery residency, they then have to subspecialize into orthopedics, cardiosurgery, pediatrics. It's very difficult. But neurosurgery, there is no general surgery like involved. Once you get out of med school, you take a specialized neurosurgery residency, because neurosurgery is much more rigorous. It's much more difficult than cardio, than pediatrics. So this is more focused. So that 6 to 7 neurosurgery residency, it's crucial. And as I said before, it's one of the most difficult jobs, as the total years it'll take is 14 to 15 years, maybe more if you're willing to subspecialize. So if from your high school year, after your high school year, it will take at least 14 to 15 years. So it's a very, very long path, but at the end, it's hopefully worth it. So salary wise, as one of the most difficult jobs in the medical profession, they have to be like fairly compensated. Looking at this chart, the highest paid is orthopedics with a $405,000 per year. And as you can see, the median pay for neurosurgeons, it's not even in this graph, it's $614,401. That is $200,000 more than the highest in that draft. So that is a lot of money. That's more than $500,000. And depending on the location, the salary can range from 200K to 900K. So in more rural regions, like in like Idaho or Ohio, with like in a town with no people, you get paid on the lower end of the spectrum, and in like higher trauma levels, you'd get paid like a little bit less. But as you go down trauma levels and as you go to more urban places like New York or San Francisco or Chicago, where there's a high rate of people coming into the hospital, your price range, the salary that you get will likely increase. There are no neurosurgeons that make upwards of 900K, maybe million, maybe more. So the starting pay for a neurosurgeon fresh out of residency is typically 200 to 300K, depending on like how good you were in your residency, how many like recommendations you get. It depends. There's a whole lot of factors that come into it, but on like a starting pay level, as like an entry level like basis, you make around 200 to 300K, which is really good salary wise. It's a lot of money. And in addition, neurosurgeons also have opportunities to branch out into many different fellowships. We'll talk more about that later, but neurosurgeons are one of the most popular. It is popular, but it's not a lot. It's not easy to attain. A lot of people try to go into neurosurgery, but it's not meant for everyone. And after they do attain neurosurgery, they tend to branch out a little bit more into fellowships. As you go into the fellowships, you make a little bit more money. Now you make a lot more money because of that subspecialties. They specialize you. They make you a professor, not a professor, a professional in your field. So next slide. Here's what I was saying. Fellowships. So the four biggest fellowships after the neurosurgery residency is pediatric neurosurgery, neurotrauma, neuro-oncology, and spinal surgery. Pediatric neurosurgery is exactly what it sounds. It's neurosurgery on little kids. Neurosurgeons can do like surgery on little kids, but it's best if they bring in the pediatric neurosurgeon because they specialize at it. That's their job. Fellowships are much shorter than the actual residency. It's not going to be 6 to 7 years. Pediatric neurosurgery is 1 to 2 years. All of these are 1 to 3 years actually. But pediatric neurosurgery focuses on the little kids who need neurosurgery, who come in with brain trauma, spinal trauma, nerve trauma, stuff like that, which brings us to our next one, neurotrauma. So neurotrauma is sort of a mixture of neurosurgery and trauma surgery. Trauma surgery deals with trauma, essentially. It deals with high impacts. It deals with cases where there's a lot of blood, a lot of gore. So neurotrauma deals with cases in which the brain and nerves are completely like shattered, they're battered, they're difficult to treat. The people that they call in are neurotrauma specialists or neurotrauma specialists. They call them in. As a neurosurgeon can do all of these, but they call in the specialists for a specialized view. That's their job. That's why they did the fellowship. People who do fellowships are called fellows. People who do residency are called residents, and all of them are doctors. Neuro-oncology, neuro implies brain, oncology implies cancer. So any sort of cancer relating to the brain, the spinal cord, or the nerves, neuro-oncologists deal with. This is a very specialized field, and they make a lot of money for it. And it is also a saddening field, as neuro-oncology is like oncology in general is a very depressing field. Neurology is like doing with the brain. So neuro-oncology has to do with the cancers of the brain. It deals with chemo, it deals with cutting out tumors, all sorts of that. And the last one, fellowship-wise for neurosurgery, is spinal surgery. As I said before, neurosurgeons can operate on the spine, they can operate on the brain, and they can operate on the nerves. But there are specialized surgeons, though. For the spine, the specialized surgeon is called a spinal surgeon. They deal with tumors on the spine, any spinal disconnections or any loose discs and stuff like that. So spinal surgeons are who you would call for any spinal injuries or traumas like that. The demand for a neurosurgeon. So let me explain the picture first. So hospitals are categorized into 4 different trauma centers or trauma levels. So level 1 is the highest. It is a major trauma center. This is important and it relates directly to the amount of neurosurgeons in the hospital. And a level 4 is a primary healthcare center, which is like, it sounds a lot less important, but I'm not going to say important. It's a lot less, urgent than a major trauma center at level 1. So the job growth for a neurosurgeon is at 14%, which is pretty decent. Most jobs are at like 4% to 10%. Job growth, 14% is pretty decent. Neurosurgeons are necessary in a hospital to be classified as a level 1 trauma center. So a level 1, as I said before, is a major trauma center. So if you want your hospital to be classified as a level 1 trauma center, at least one neurosurgeon has to be working there at the time. If you have no neurosurgeons working in the hospital at one point, it is not a level 1 trauma center at that time. There has to be one trauma surgeon who is in the middle of his shift at all times. So they're crucial. If the second that a neurosurgeon ceases to be at that hospital, it gets demoted. And as neurosurgery is always necessary, demand for them will always be high or moderate. It's not something that just can be like replaced by machines or like just can be like rendered obsolete. Neurosurgeons will always be around. There's always going to be people who need neurosurgery, and there's always going to be people who help provide it. So a typical day for a neurosurgeon is very long, very rigorous, and very, very difficult. Neurosurgery is among the hardest and most mentally straining tasks, as it takes the most time out of all the specialties, specifically the... Can you get... Stop.
No,
get out, Abraham. Stop. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Neurosurgery is among the hardest and most mentally straining tasks, taking the most time out of all the specialties. Most neurosurgeons can only meet with like 14 patients. Neurologists, as I mentioned before, are not neurosurgeons. They meet with much more patients since they don't have to do actual surgeries or actual full-length procedures. So neurosurgeons can do 1 to 3 long surgeries in one day. Long surgeries, I mean, say 8 to 15 hours per se. 1 to 3. I know that doesn't add up to like 24 in one day, but like that's how much like they can do. Or 3 to 6 short surgeries. Short surgeries mean from 4 to 9 hours. That's typically what a short surgery is. It seems very long, but for neurosurgeons in comparison, there are of the longest surgeries, though. So 5 to 9 hours isn't very much for them. And the wake up time for a neurosurgeon is extremely early, typically at 5 or at 4:30 a.m. Because a hospital needs a neurosurgeon, they have a very, very crucial necessity for them. And a necessity for neurosurgeons, a crucial personality trait that they must possess is flexibility. Because neurosurgery, it's a gamble. You know, it's very difficult to plan how things are going to go along. You know, you can do everything that you can, but if there's a mistake, the neurosurgeon has to be able to adapt to it. He has to be able to deal with it, and he has to be able to adapt to it and handle it as the situation goes on. If it doesn't happen, then it's game over. The patient dies. Then that's wrong. That's horrible. So it's crucial that they're flexible. So in conclusion, I would like to be a neurosurgeon. I know it's one of the most difficult tasks, and I know I've said it's rigorous. It's very difficult all the time. So I don't need to tell you anymore that it's very difficult. I apologize for my family. And I want to be a neurosurgeon because of the challenge it provides and because of my individual experiences that led me towards it. I've had a very long history with medicine. As a kid, I was burned. And in that process, I've always been I've always thought about the concept of surgery. I never gotten it. I would like to get it. And then the process of neurology, or the field of neurology, always interested me. It's a very puzzling field. We don't know everything about the brain. It's one of the world's biggest mysteries. So neurology, if I could get into that, neurosurgery, if you can cut into the brain, find out what's in there, it's a very interesting, it's very daring profession, if I say so. So I told you before, it is rigorous. It will take a very, very long time to become this occupation. But I sincerely believe that if I put in the work, if I put in the time, and if I put in the effort, it will happen. And if God helps me, then I believe that I can be a neurosurgeon. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really sorry about my family coming in and out. They just came back. Thank you so much for listening. And Professor, have a good day.